All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Good thing Zoom is back up and alive, so to speak. Again, want to welcome everyone. Whatever, a bunch of questions came in. I don't know how many we're going to deal with here. One question that comes up, and whenever it comes up, I would say often or often enough, and that is, how can you rely on the law of the land? Right, the law of the land, let's say, goes against portions in the Torah. Are we commanded to ignore someone who tells us to follow such laws? Why? Because these laws go against the Torah. And if we listen, so another part of the question is, if we listen to Rabbi tells us to abide by certain laws, is that permitted? So let's hit the question. Let the question head on. There are times that the law of the land will go against what the Torah says. So even though that's the law of the land, it's going to depend. Let's make clear. It's going to depend on what law we're talking about. If it's something, let's say there's no way to fight it. It's that or go to jail. Again, it depends. It depends what it is. Let's say in former Soviet Union, way back when, it was punishable by, expulsion to Siberia, maybe even death, either to teach Torah, to have, to do circumcision, another mitzvah. Now, circumcision, obligation, right? 100% obligation that a person, has to do for their son. If they don't do it, could be the Beis Din. The rabbinical court's obligated if a father doesn't do it or have it done. But what if it goes against the law of the land? So in general, I may say, well, who cares about the law of the land? It doesn't matter. So person, in this case, got an obligation to circumcise their son. Person has an obligation to teach their kids Torah. That goes against the law of the land. So what do? You got to do it away. Hopefully you don't get caught. Then, that's what you have to do. You have no choice. Because if you don't teach kids Torah, finished. Right? There's no hope. There's totally no hope. So they have an obligation to learn Torah. Circumcision, you got an obligation. Holidays, you have an obligation. So you got to do it in a way where obviously you're not going to get caught. And these people stuck behind the Iron Curtain, they put their lives pretty much in danger by doing such a thing. Right now, someone would ask the $1.5 million question, is that as far as I have to go? Right? That's the question. Do I have to go that far? And the answer is, yeah. You got to celebrate the holidays. What are you going to do? You're not going to eat Passover. You're not going to eat matzah on Passover. Right? It's against the rules. It's against the law. So certain things you got to do. And you have no choice. Now, there could be certain things. Again, we're just talking generalities there. Could be certain things. Question is how far it goes. I'll give an example. Person, there was a whole case a few years ago that you had, or a number of years ago, where you had somebody worked, this is by a non-Jew, but we'll make it easy, make the case by a Jew here. What happens? You work in a county clerk's office, right? You push papers. That's what you do. You're I don't know if you're a secretary, you're whatever, you work for the county clerk. Two men come in, or two women, it doesn't matter. And they want to fill out a form to get married. Goes against the Torah. Question is, you're not sanctioning that they should get married. You're pushing the papers. Are you allowed to fill in the paperwork to help them? So the woman who refused to do it, non-Jewish woman, doesn't go that far. Now, on the books, anyone comes in, you have to help them. Right? That's the law. Problem is, it goes against Leviticus chapter 18. Right? Look at that. Goes against Leviticus chapter 18. Right? Now, the question in such a case, this is, as the English would say, it's a little bit dodgy. Why? Because you're not marrying them. You're filling in paperwork. You're helping them. Right? Is that the same thing? Right? So there's a question. I'll make it more crystal clear. Let's say someone borrowed money from a Jew. They borrow money from a Jew, and that Jew charges the interest. Jew's not allowed to charge another Jew interest. Now, in this document that Reuven is borrowing money from Shimon, that he borrows $100. Shimon says, you got to pay me $150 back. Reuven agrees because he needs $100. So he writes up the contract. He gets two guarantors. He gets Levi and Zvulun to sign. Now, everybody transgresses it. Right? Reuven and Shimon transgress. Why? You're not allowed to lend and you're not allowed to pay back interest to a Jew. They transgress. Now it's a pretty severe prohibition. Person who lends money with ribbis to a Jew doesn't apply to a non-Jew. I can lend as much money with interest to a non-Jew as I want. Only I can't do it for a Jew. So if someone, let's say, needed money, a Jew needed money, you lend them money, can't charge them interest. Now, if you do, the punishment's so severe you don't get up at resurrection of the dead. That's how severe it is. Now, Levi and Zvulun sign on the document. They are the guarantors. Now, did they lend the money? No. They get an obligation to pay it back only if Shimon well-tooth on it, he doesn't pay it. They would have to pay. But let's say it doesn't go that far. Let's say Shimon pays. So what did Levi and Zvulun do over here? They're guarantors. They sign on the document. They also transgress. Guilty by association. So now you have cases, the law of the land, and there's another case where guy has he's a florist, and I think it was either a florist or baked cakes. I think it was a florist, if I remember correctly. Two people come in, they want a whole bunch of flowers or whatever for this marriage, for this abomination marriage. Right? Again, doesn't matter, two men, two women, whatever. Forbidden again according to Torah. Refused. They sued him. They said, we're coming to you. You have to serve us. So the question would be, you're not telling them what they're doing is right. You're not agreeing. Right? You're not agreeing over here. Okay, you happen to be in the flower business. They want flowers, for this abomination. You're not saying it's okay. You're doing them a service. You're giving them flowers. Or do we, right? Do we say that would be okay because they don't really have anything to do with it? They're not sanctioning, or do we say no? Do we say, well, we call you Messiah the Varavera? You're helping someone who's committing the sin. And it's as if you agree. As we said, guilty by association. Now, what if, they sue you? So what if they sue you? The law of the land is, someone comes to be serviced, whatever, you have something, you're selling them whatever, they come, they say, listen, you have to sell it to me. Right? What would the logical argument be? Go somewhere else. I don't have to serve you. Who says I have to serve you? Now, what if you get fined? So if it's forbidden to do, because you're guilty by association, I spoke about this quite a bit. It's on my class on Pirkei Avos and Ethics for Our Fathers. Guilty by association, even if you didn't do the act. Right? The example there was not exactly the same. The example there is you're hanging out with people that do things wrong. You're hanging out with Rishonim, with evil people. You're not sanctioning what they do. You're not telling them what they do is right. You're hanging out with them because they're cool to hang out with. So commentaries there say, you're just as bad as them. Why am I just as bad as them? I'm not doing what they're doing. I'm not rummaging, pillaging, doing drugs, other things. I'm not doing any of that. I just like to hang out with them. Because they're cool people. What's the problem? The commentaries there say, you know what? That's guilty by association. And you get penalized because it's like you did it. I didn't do anything. Guilty by association. So, if the law of the land, let's say the law of the land would say you can't keep Shabbos. You're not allowed to keep Shabbos. You don't have to, you can't listen. I might go to jail or other things. Right? So, who says you have to stay in that place? A lot of people certainly left Russia, Poland, other places because, they couldn't live there. Because they made life so miserable. Right? They say, but who says I can leave? Different issue. A person can't get out. But they say, you're not allowed to keep Shabbos. You can't listen. They may fine you, they may this, they may that. So what? Torah says I have to keep it. And if the law of the land is, well, you can't and it's forbidden, I don't know, you're not obligated to listen. You're not allowed, sorry, let's say better. You're not allowed to listen to what they say. It's forbidden. Right? Second part of the question, aren't we commanded to ignore someone who tells us to follow such laws? Right? And what happens if they say it's going to cost you your job? If they don't own your own business, it's going to cost you your job. Okay? That's the price. Price the person may pay. But you don't listen to what they say. Torah comes first. Right? Obviously, someone there points out because the laws go against the Torah. Right. Now, this gets a little more dodgy. Last part of the question is, do we listen to a rabbi that tells us to abide by certain laws of the same land? No. Well, I shouldn't say no straight away. Depends on what it is. If this rabbi says, well, the law of the land says you're not allowed to keep Shabbos. You go to a rabbi and say, well, what do I do? Don't we have an obligation to keep Shabbos? Yes. So you listen to him. Right? But if you're not allowed to, right? Let's say you got a case where this rabbi tells you that you're allowed to go according to the laws of the land. It says you're allowed to do such a thing, but it's forbidden. So who says you listen to that rabbi? Go to a higher authority. Something like that you don't listen to. And that's why, my Rebbe should be came out very strongly against Chief Rabbi of England, Mr. Mervis. Why? Because, a number of things he said that were problematic. One of them was that government wanted religious schools to teach about homosexuality. Now, he's the chief rabbi. We'll just keep in mind the other Orthodox really don't hold of him anyway. It doesn't really matter. Point is, he's quote unquote the chief rabbi of England. And the chief rabbi of England, political position. And he says, guess what? It's okay. It's fine. We should teach this in yeshiva. Now, question is what he really meant. So, if I would have been there when he said that, I said, okay, excuse me, what does Leviticus chapter 18 say? Verse 21, 22, what does it say over there? No, it's Webster's fifth definition. We're not really there. No, it says it's forbidden. The act itself is forbidden. Torah prohibition, most severe punishment by death. Just like desecration of Shabbos. So how can you teach it? Right? Oh, you lose funding in the schools. Good. Don't have to raise the money. So we'll lose funding. Right? If they give funding. Or they say, we'll shut your school down. All right, shut it down. In Volozhin, you know why they shut the school down? They shut the school down because they wanted to teach Russian language. That's why they shut it down. Because they didn't want anyone to dictate what they're allowed to teach or not allowed to teach. But that was it. So things like that, you don't compromise. But the chief rabbi comes out and says, it's okay to teach. Sorry. My Bible doesn't say that. Not even a King James version says such a thing. So don't listen to him. You can't listen to such a thing. But it's the law of the land says this is what you got to do. Otherwise, it's going to shut you down. Okay, so shut them down. So they get shut down. Can't compromise over here. No compromise. Just as a side point. The schools in England got a lot of pressure to teach this stuff. Guess who they didn't ask? Guess which quote-unquote religion or religious people they didn't make this statement to? Muslims. They didn't try and force their way in. You know why? Because they would have burnt down the country. They would have burnt down the stinking country. That's what they would have done. But Jews, they know. We're not going to do that. That's not what we do. That's not who we are. At the same time, that's something pretty egregious. That's something pretty bad. So it could depend on what it is. But in general, if the law of the land says X goes against Torah, I don't have to listen. And if a rabbi tells you to follow these laws against Torah, I beg to differ. They're not a rabbi. You got to stand up for Torah. What gives you a right to say, well, we have to listen to the law of the land? We got to respect the law of the land. There is an obligation. Don't get me wrong. Not going to be called the rabble rouser here or an anarchist. We're not saying go against the law of the land in general. What we're saying is you go against the law of the land if it goes against what the Torah says. And if a rabbi tells you you're allowed to do that when it's forbidden, you don't listen to him either. You got to be careful who you listen to, as we always say. Because there are quote-unquote Orthodox rabbis will say, homosexuality is not a problem. And they're pro-advocates of it. So you ask me the $1.5 million question, how can they do that? No. You have to ask them. Right? Those type of questions I don't answer. As most people know. The Torah says clear. 100% clear. It's forbidden. That's it. Now, I could show empathy for such people. Right? Not, I don't think these people have easy lives by any stretch. They have tremendously difficult lives. They don't fit in. We have to have empathy. We can't condone it. Some say, well, if you were, rabbi of an Orthodox synagogue, two guys come in that are married. You're going to say, listen, this might not be the right place for you. I ain't doing it in a nice way. But listen, not going to condone it. Not in any way, shape, or form. There are people that will. I can't answer for them. Cannot answer for them. You're going to say, but, there are people who commit fraud, do other things. They're allowed there. There's a limit here. There's a limit here. They want to pray there. You can't stop them from praying there. But you can't condone it either. You can't say it's okay. Into marriage, no difference. Forbidden. You're not allowed to say it's okay. Like I mentioned the story before. A friend of mine I went to yeshiva with went to his sister's wedding. So sister married an Anju. So he said, everyone knew I was there under protest. I was like, what do you mean? Are we there under protest? Eating your kosher food under protest. Doing the horror under protest. Now, under protest means you don't go. That's what it means. Yeah, but family and pressure, I get it. Going to be a lot of pressure. And they're going to tell you, you've changed, you ruined the family, you're breaking it up, you're that. Yeah, a lot of pressure. But would you rather feel the pressure from God above or feel pressure here? You'd rather feel pressure here. And any people cajole you, this, that, come on. It's not the end of the world. Oh, we think it is. That is systematically destroying the Jewish people from within. 60, 70% intermarriage and assimilation. That's pretty bad. I have to condone it. Either it's a sibling or whatever, or a parent, God forbid. I have to say it's okay. Why do I have to say it's okay? They want you to say it's okay. Tough noogies. Or as my Rebbe would say, go eat kugel. What do I care? You're not going to come out smelling like a rose. It's only damage control. You're a fanatic. You're this, you're that. Okay. Let them say whatever they want. You cannot say it's okay. You can't say it's okay. There's no way around it. Certain leniencies, maybe here, there, whatever, we can rely on for different things. This ain't one of them. So how can you go to an intermarriage? How can a Jew go to an intermarriage? When it goes against the essence of what Judaism is. You can't. Period. Not something you can do. Doesn't matter what pressure people put on. Doesn't matter what people say. Can't do it. You'll say, I'll be ostracized from my family. Okay. It's a good thing they're so open-minded. Right? Until you go against what, something that bothers them. Something that like hits a raw nerve. Right? As I say, by family and friends. All you have to do, you want to see how much they respect what you do. Let's say they have a family function you go to, you don't eat there. In their house. Don't eat there. See what happens. When it comes to food, that's already offensive. What? You're not going to eat? You're not going to eat anything? I used to eat, used to this. I don't anymore. Torah says I'm not allowed to. That's it. Food's a big thing. You stop eating in someone's house, they get offended. Very easily get offended. So any rabbi is going to tell you where it's forbidden to go according to the law of the land against what the Torah says, you don't listen. A rabbi is not a rabbi, he's a fool. Right? Where it's forbidden. Right? In most cases, you have to see what it is. but probably most cases, if not all cases, the law of the land is going to go against Torah in different ways. So what can you do? You still have to keep it, regardless what the repercussions may be. Look what happened to the former Soviet Union. People hid. People risked their lives just to do circumcision. They didn't give in. Some got caught, got sent to Siberia, survived. Eventually got out. You don't teach the next generation, you don't have a next generation. It's pretty severe. And someone's got to tell you you're allowed to do that. Who says? Who says I have to listen to such a person? There will be left-wing, modern Orthodox Jews. Some may say that. Some may say, we got to respect homosexuals. We got to treat them with kid gloves. We got to welcome them. Who says I have to welcome them? Someone who's a real rough will tell them what they don't need to hear, what they don't want to hear. And that would be, you want to come, you can come. I'm not condoning what you do in any way, shape, or form. You don't get any honors, other things, you lay the law down. Can't condone it. A person commits fraud, you can't condone that either. Or they do other things. My Rebbe would say, person's a rabbi of a synagogue and they're not trying to drive him out, you're not doing the job right. Because the job is not to let them hear what they need, what they want to hear. You got to let them hear what they need to hear. It's a totally different thing. It might ruffle some feathers. Okay. It's not a popularity contest. And there are things people don't want to hear. Okay, but sometimes they have to hear it. Right? So if it goes against the law of the land, you keep what the Torah says. Law of the land goes by the wayside. Again, it depends how much they're going to enforce it. Etc. It doesn't mean you do it what the law of the land says. So you do it in hiding. You figure out a way. But it's got to be done. Can't discredit the Torah and say, well, I'm not going to keep it because of the law of the land. In such a case, and this happened, if it would happen often, what would we say? You leave. Get out of that country at some point. What a lot of Jews did. They left. Russia, Europe, whatever, they left. Persecution was so bad. You don't have much of a choice. You got to find a place that's going to allow you to practice what you need to practice, to do what you need to do. That's why America was a tremendous haven for that. Only problem is, the influence of society destroy, people assimilate in all kinds of things. So it's good they can practice what they need to practice for sure, but there are also repercussions in other ways. That's how I guess I would answer that. Somebody asked, are there no hide shiduchim? So there are people that are involved, someone who doesn't convert or not interested. Somebody not interested in conversion because we're not looking, not looking for converts in any way. At the same time, a non-Jew, one of the problems with Noahites in general is lack of community. There aren't so many Noahide communities. A lot of it is online. There are some, but much of it's online. And, who are Noahites going to marry? Can't marry a Christian. I mean, you could. Not forbidden per se, but you are going to have issues definitely raising kids. So there are people out there working with Noahites in order to find the marriage partners. That's a good thing. That's a tremendously good thing. So, in general, Noahide should marry other Noahide or find other Noahide, right? 100%. Noahide can't marry a Jew. That would be forbidden, certainly for a Jew, right? Why? Very simple, because Noahide's a non-Jew, right? Can't marry a Noahide. Jew cannot marry a Noahide. Secular Jew, religious Jew, doesn't matter. So Noahide can only marry a non-Jew like them, going in the same path. Again, that I know many cases where people become Noahides and their spouse is a Christian. Now, in such a case, does a Noahide have an obligation to get divorced? No. Well, I'll have to stay married. Unless there are other issues, I wouldn't tell someone to get divorced because of such a case. But, if they have kids, they're going to get mixed messages. It'll cause friction. 100% it'll cause friction. Question is how much friction? Question how much, how difficult it will be to stay married to such a person. Because I do know somebody, not exactly this case, but I do know someone who converted, and they were very happy they converted, but they lost their spouse in the process, and they suffered. They suffered tremendously from it. But again, I didn't hear the whole story, right? But the person said, they're very happy. They're a Jew, they finished the process and all that, but they paid a price. They paid a serious price. They lost their spouse in the process. Now, is that, the person obligated to do such a thing? No. Because who says you have to convert? No obligation to convert. If a person wants to, okay. But again, I would not uproot a marriage because of it. I get it. People say I'm so passionate about it. I already feel Jewish, whatever. How can I ever go back to being a Christian? Okay, you can't go back to being a Christian. But if your spouse is, they got to work something out. That doesn't mean you have to get divorced. But if a person would say, there are other issues. If there are other issues, that's a different story. But all things being equal, if there aren't other issues, that wouldn't be something to do. That would be something to get divorced about. Now, people will say, but they're really, really, really passionate. Okay. And if a person decides to get divorced, fine. I just, if there are no other real factors involved, I wouldn't do it. I know somebody that's, whole family was converting. The downsized, moved next to a synagogue, this, that. And one of the spouses said, I can't do it. Something happened, they said, I can't go further. I can't do it. Meanwhile, the kids are in schools, right? They're in Jewish schools. The other spouse says, I can't go back. There's no possible way to go back. That was tragic. That ended up in divorce. So you're going to say, but what happened over here? Is that what God wanted? That's what happens. Does God want people to break up marriages because of religion? No. But again, who says a person has to convert? In this case, you had people already gone very far. So to turn back, let's say they say, okay, I'm not going to convert, we'll stay Noahites, take them out of schools. We'll open school now. They don't want to do that. They'd already, been keeping things for so long. Why go back and do that? But the other spouse says, I can't do it. There's no possible way. They just, I don't know, they flaked out. They got burnt in a certain way. But the other spouse couldn't, what are they supposed to do? There's no turning back. And even if they weren't going to be Christians, they didn't want to be Noahites. They'd already gone too far. Yeah, that's tragic. That, I would agree, is tragic. Can it happen? Can happen. Is that what God wants? I don't know what God wants. But then what happened? So, conversion should not destroy a family. I know of other cases where the family stayed together. Person became a Noahide, that's it. He really wanted to convert. Really, really, really wanted to convert. Not happening. The person said, I can't afford to get divorced. He doesn't want to get divorced. So there's only one or two options in such a case. Either the spouse doesn't convert and stays in Noahide, right? Or they get divorced. And those are two options. But some have been married for so long, seemingly no other issues or real issues. You're not going to do that. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to do such a thing. Totally doesn't make sense. Now, can it happen? It can happen. Definitely can happen. I'm not a marriage counselor. I didn't play one on TV either. But in this case, where you would have, let's say, a Noahide married to a Christian. So you got to work it out. Figure out, how you're going to deal with it. But it shouldn't be an issue that's going to destroy the marriage. Again, someone's going to claim, you don't understand, it's so passionate, I'm so passionate about it, this, that. How can I not convert? But who says you have to? Nobody says you have to. Nobody says you're obligated to. And all things being equal, if there were no other issues in the marriage, why would you get divorced because of it? As someone points out, it could be problematic. One of the Noahide couple wants to convert the husband and the wife. It doesn't matter which one. I'd say like this. Normally, who's stronger, the man or the woman? The woman. The woman will control the house. Right? So in other words, if you have kids and she's a Christian, the kids will go probably after her. That's probably what will happen. But it doesn't matter. In either case, it doesn't matter. Whether it's the husband or the wife. If either one is a Christian, the other one wants to be a Noahide. Who says you have to get divorced in such a case? You have to work out the differences. You have to have mutual respect. Okay, you want to go to church? I'm not going to church. But it can get kind of nasty, I would assume. Depends how religious the person is. The person, the Bible thumper, I know someone that, spouse came from a bunch of Bible thumpers. The other spouse became a Noahide, and this person suffered unbelievable. Unbelievably, they suffered. Made fun of this, that, by the spouse, by family, like all kinds of things. But what happened? Interesting. They weren't going to get divorced. But interesting enough, that Bible thumper, they came around and saw the stupidity of Christianity. They came around. I'm not saying everybody's going to. But it can certainly happen. But this part, again, up until that point, this person suffered tremendously. It's one thing, okay, we can agree to disagree. You're not going to convince me. You're not going to convince me. I'm not going to convince you. But there has to be mutual respect. If there's not mutual respect, that marriage is in trouble. Because if each spouse is going to belittle the other, come on, you believe this guy hanging on the stick, he came back and this and whatever, and the other person's going to say, come on, you don't believe in him, you're going to find out forever. The quote you verses, quote you this, quote you that. So that's going to lead to problems. That for sure is going to lead to problems. So what's going to happen? Could it lead to divorce? In theory, it could. I'm not saying it will, but if you're not mutual respect, you got a problem. In that case, you just have to say, I agree to disagree. But again, what's the problem? We're passionate. 100% we're passionate. So we have all this passion, other things go out the window. It could destroy marriage. I'm not saying not. Could. I'm just saying it doesn't have to. And it shouldn't. Right? The reality is it really shouldn't. Somebody asked what's the view of pest control? 100% permissible. You're allowed to kill pests. You're allowed to, bring in an exterminator. Not a problem. Right? These things are dangerous. Cause disease, other things. You don't want them around. 100% permissible, get rid of them. Even a case that they have a dangerous animal on Shabbos. Let's say a snake. Let's say a scorpion. Something like that. Something like that. So you're allowed to kill it on Shabbos. 100% you're allowed to kill it on Shabbos. Not a problem. It's a mitzvah to do it. 100% a mitzvah to do it. So you don't want these things around. That's definitely permissible. Somebody asks, who's in charge of helping know how to get married? There's different people. I know someone contacted me a while ago about that. I have to dig it up, but I can put someone in contact with them. Someone asks, our perceived universe imperfect. I don't know, does God make anything imperfect? Doesn't seem like the universe is imperfect. Nothing's imperfect. We might make things imperfect. God doesn't make anything imperfect. So the universe, the way it stands, seems to be exactly what God wants it. Right? So if we say it's problematic this way, that way, so who created the universe? God created the universe. So if God created the universe, then we're saying that he made something that's bad. If we say the universe is imperfect, or anything in this world is imperfect, that's what we would say. So first of the 13 principles of the Rambam is that God is absolute. God doesn't make mistakes. We make mistakes. God knows exactly what he's doing, even if we don't understand. So if we say anything, that God made, is imperfect, then we're saying that God's not absolute and that God makes mistakes. That's why we say by any book, quote unquote, religious book, whether it be Christians, the Muslims, you find a mistake, can't be true. God has no needs. So if God is absolute and he has no needs, he's not lacking anything. Not only that, if he made something, there is a discussion, if he made something, well, who says it's going to be bad? There is a question, 2.5 year discussion between the house of Hill and the house of Shammai, whether creating man was a good idea or not. Yeah, that probably wasn't a good idea, but, men have to look into their actions, different things. There are different reasons why. It doesn't mean God's not perfect. He made man knowing that we could do great things, we could do terrible things. He made man with the ability to have a soul inside of them to only go after spirituality. But we're in a body. So there's a struggle between body and soul, always. So man is imperfect in certain ways, a lot of ways probably, but God understood that. God 100% understood that. Everything else is programmed DNA. We have free choice. We can make whatever choice we want. So by having free choice, we're imperfect. But if you look at, you can say, so God made something imperfect. But look at the human body. Let's analyze what the human body does. What the eye does, what the brain does. All the miracles of the human body. Human body is perfect. We corrupt it, we do other things, but the human body, the way it's made, quote unquote, according to nature, unbelievable miracle. So do with other things. Question is our perception. Our perception. Who cares about our perception? Right? Did God leave our perceived universe imperfect? Why? Why did he leave it imperfect? What we perceive doesn't mean it's true. We perceive a lot of things. We see what goes on in the world and how evil people seem to have it easy. Righteous people suffer. From our perception, we don't see the bigger picture. But how can we perceive it? God doesn't know what he's doing. God forbid. That's the way it looks. 100%, but we don't see the bigger picture. See, our perception is because we're in a human body. And our perception is skewed, 100% skewed. At the same time, we have to be able to see what's going on in the rest of the world. See the bigger picture. When you don't see the bigger picture, there are a lot of things that look bad, that look, wrong. Injustice. Nice guys finish last. A lot of things. That's only because we're in a body. That's because we what we perceive isn't real. Because there are many things we see we don't understand at all. We don't fathom. Why? Very simple. Because we don't have the eyes to see. Many, many things. Many, many things. Someone asked, going through a conversion with your wife or husband, you have to live in separate homes. No. Not at all. You can live in the same home. Right? There is a question. There will be a question that right before the conversion, you have to separate for 3 months. Make sure that, if the woman's not pregnant. But you can live in the same home. If you have older kids or whatever, let's say at home, that would be easier. If not, person may have to sleep out. Right? But in general, before conversion, up until that point, that wouldn't be a problem. They wouldn't have to live in separate homes. That definitely wouldn't be an issue, except right before conversion. And only because there's a decree that the rabbis made a decree that you need 3 months distinction. That a woman, shouldn't be pregnant. Certainly as a non-Jew, and then if she's already pregnant, okay. But if not, then you should have a 3 month quote unquote separation, until the conversion. But in general, they don't have to live in separate homes. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me in Facebook at Rabbi Chaim Coffman, or be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com, whichever good beginning of the day.